Welcome, everyone. My name is Amichai Magen. I'm the director of the Israel Studies program at the Center on Democracy, Development, and the Rule of Law here at FSI. And before introducing our distinguished speaker, Ambassador Kerim, Uras, let me just make three very brief preliminary remarks. So the first is that this event is held in partnership between the Israel Studies program, the Abbasi program in Islamic Studies, and the Stanford Middle Eastern Studies Forum, the latter two led by my dear friend, Professor Ali Yaisioglu. Now, I think we have to acknowledge, and I'm actually very happy about this and very proud of this, that there are actually very few places around the world today where we could have these types of shared events in close partnership. But we have this partnership here at FSI, and I would say Stanford more broadly, and that is very special indeed. The second preliminary remark has to do with the format of today's proceedings. Ambassador Uras will address us for about 20 to 25 minutes on the topic before us today. The focus will be on what we might describe this evolving new triangle of the Levant, Turkey, Syria, Israel. But you will very quickly hear and see that to understand this dynamic, you have to expand the analytical and historical lens. I think it's fair to say that both Turkey and Israel are what we call in international relations theory, pivot countries that have multiple lenses of both regional and global interactions. I think that's very true of Turkey in particular. And so I think quite naturally we will go beyond the narrow confines of Turkey, Syria, Israel. There will be questions having to do with the future of Gaza. I think that's central. Future of Lebanon. So you'll see an amalgam of issues. It gives me great pleasure to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Kerim Uras. He's had a long and very distinguished diplomatic career. He was born in Ankara and graduated from Ankara University in 1985, studying political science and international relations. He wrote his MA thesis on Iraq and ethnic structures in Iraq, a topic that I think was prescient in many respects. Kerim began his diplomatic career in the Cyprus department of the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ankara, and has since held numerous diplomatic positions abroad, including in Hanover, Germany, in London, and at the UN headquarters in New York. He served as Turkey's ambassador to Greece from 2011 to 2016, and then to Canada from 2018 to 2023. Interestingly, and I think very relevant to our discussion today, between 2010 and 2011, he served as ambassador designate to Israel while residing in Ankara. And that was due to the Mavi Marmara affair, which you may refer to, Ambassador. Over the course of his career, he also worked in the Middle East, in the Europe, and in the NATO departments of the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he served as the chief foreign policy advisor to the Prime Minister of Turkey, Prime Minister Binali Yildirim. I believe he was the last Turkish Prime Minister, as the position was eliminated in 2017 as part of the constitutional reform in Turkey, which formally transitioned the country from a parliamentary democracy to an executive presidential system. So a very important domestic transformation. And since retiring from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2023, Kerim has been working as advisor to the chairman at Çelik Holding, a Turkish conglomerate operating in 34 countries around the world, with its companies in the fields of energy, construction, mining, textile, and finance. Last but not least, he is an honorary fellow at Carleton University in Ottawa in Canada. And perhaps most importantly, I should say, he's the father of 3 children, and he resides in Istanbul today and not in Ankara. Maybe you can tell us about that. Ambassador Uras, a tremendous pleasure and honor to have you with us, and thank you for visiting us, and thank you for partnering with us, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for handing me this issue of a Gordian knot, and I'll try to do my best to maybe understand it a bit more. You know, Gordian is only 50 kilometers to Ankara, so we are, I suppose, used to working with Gordian knots. Now, I want to just say a few words on, maybe I'll define a roadmap for us to understand the issues, or do an outline. The relationships, first of all, then the wider region, zoom out a bit and look at the wider region as we see on the map. And maybe say a few words about what we can expect the way ahead. And then if I'm sure we'll have time, Q&A. So the relationships I would break down into, on this topic at least, Turkey-Israel, Turkey-Syria, and Israel-Syria. Now, Turkey-Israel relations, they are very important in my view, and in the view of anyone who is interested in the region. We are both non-Arab countries, and guess who the third is? Also, we are democracies. We are US allies. Turkey is a NATO country, so Turkey and Israel are both anchored firmly in the Western camp, I would say. They are both developed economies in the region. Military, strategic, and diplomatic cooperation is ongoing and I would say intense. From time to time more so, sometimes it goes up and down. We have historical ties going back centuries. We have a very solid international framework of international agreements, which I think has proven that the relation is quite durable despite ups and downs. So the legal framework is quite built. We are both in the Eastern Mediterranean. Academic cooperation is quite vibrant, and that's another durable area in the relationship. The people-to-people ties go back to the Spanish Inquisition, when the Jewish population was given the choice to either convert or be done with. So the Ottoman Empire at the time, in 1491, invited around 200,000 Jews into the Ottoman Empire. They came by ships, and that was a very strong, of course, bond between us. And the Jewish population prospered in the Ottoman Empire and played very important roles. I'm proud to say that during these hundreds of years of history, we didn't have any dark pages, so which is quite unique, I would say. So I think that's very important when we analyze this relationship. Contrary to the widespread belief, I would say that we have overlapping interests. And first of all, peace and stability in the Middle East, of course. But what's less touched upon is the nuclear non-proliferation, especially when it comes to Iran. I think we have a common denominator there. It's not expressed as much as it should be, but it's there. Counterterrorism, of course, both countries suffer from terrorism. Different actors, different groups maybe, but they have both suffered a lot and are vigilant against terrorism. So that's another common denominator. The strong Jewish lobbies in the world have traditionally supported Turkey. These days maybe we are going through a difficult period, but traditionally that support is there. Hydrocarbons, Israel is now discovered a lot of gas and oil in the East Med. One would say the topography, the undersea topography of the Eastern Mediterranean would dictate that we have to cooperate if that's to be exported to larger markets like Europe. Because if you go west to Europe, let's say if you wanted to export that gas, the Cretan trench doesn't allow it. So to give you an idea, it's technically feasible, you can do an underwater line, but it would cost you, let's say, 13 to 15 billion, while a line via Turkey or the Eastern Med and maybe Turkish Cyprus, if you're in the sea, would cost you about 1 billion. So there's a big discrepancy there. So the geography and underwater topography dictate that we cooperate. Our relations, assessing Turkey-Israeli relations in a nutshell, volatility, ups and downs is an issue. The Palestinian issue and the public opinions can become polarized, which tie the hands of the politicians. So it's not very stable. Mind you, Turkey was the country with the predominantly Muslim population, the first country to recognize Israel in the outset. So that's unique, and that was a good time. And then during the years, the troubles, then in '92 it started taking off again and upgrading our relations. And I was happy to be part of, and I was in the ministry in that department, so I was happy to be part of the period when the relations were really developing. For example, here we see a picture of Demirel, that's President Demirel, that's the first presidential visit in 1996. I was there and we signed 6 agreements, which paved the way actually to the strong economic relations which we enjoy today. Despite any political ups and downs, the economy is quite stable due to that. Then another important visit was then Prime Minister, now President Erdogan's visit in 2005. He visited Yad Vashem. He also did the tour and was quite vocal in describing anti-Semitism as a crime against humanity during this visit. It was, I think, Ariel Sharon's time and maybe Katsav, if I'm not mistaken, President. And he also described the Iranian nuclear drive as a negative thing for both countries. So he acknowledged the common denominator there. Then Perez visited Turkey in 2007. He even spoke in Parliament, so that was a good time. Then we had our downs in 2010, the Mavi Marmara incident. Again, I was unfortunately, as I was packing my bags to go and serve in Israel, I was put on hold for a year and a half while the negotiations continued. You might recall the incident where a flotilla was raided and 9 Turks perished. So that was a low point in our relations, and unfortunately I was locked in that discussion. Then when it transpired that after the negotiation that the conditions wouldn't be fulfilled, Turkey said, well, then I'm withdrawing my ambassador, and that was me. So unfortunately, and on paper, of course, because I wasn't in Israel, I was in Ankara at the time. But that paved the way for me to go to Greece, where I served for 5 years after that. But back to our relations, of course, we sometimes have different regional approaches, and political relations are strained, but they are very durable. So I think and I hope that we will pick up again very soon, sooner the better. I hope, and we will hopefully have a good way forward. I want to say a few words about Turkey-Syria relations. This is the Syrian map. You see the ethnic structure there. It's you can see hundreds of these on the internet, but it gives you an idea. And I think the most important part is this one here. This is, I'll tell you why. But back to our relations, we are historically very close. Historical ties with Syria go back to 1516 when it joined the Ottoman Empire until 1918 when it left, so about 400 years together. We have a long border, 911 kilometers. It's an important border. It's not mountainous, so it's open and navigable, and it's the way down to the Middle East, as you see on the map. Cultural and religious similarities are very deep, and to the extent that when the refugees came, we had the figure is from 3.5 million to 10 million of refugees, Syrian refugees, came to Turkey during the troubles with Assad when the Arab Spring started and it turned sour in Syria in 2011. When they had to hit the road, they came to Turkey, and we have been together for a decade, longer than a decade, and hundreds of thousands of children were born in Turkey from Syrian parents. They are in all walks of life. I think it was a relatively smooth journey due to this cultural and religious similarity. So, like everyone, I mean, there are bad apples, but I would say our experience was quite good, and it was a relatively good journey with them. Now the tide is turning and they're going back to Syria, so we'll see how many go back and how that shapes up. That's part of this discussion perhaps. Economy, the Syrian economy is less developed and it trades a lot with Turkey, so that's a common denominator with us. Water, of course, is very important for them. They are downstream with the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers, so that's a big issue always between us. It's a railroad to the Middle East, the ancient Berlin to Baghdad railroad built by the Germans in the Ottoman period. That crosses through Syria, so you can't continue down to Iraq without going through Syria. Roads cross, if you do trade with the Middle East or Turkey, you have to go through Syria. Again, we are both Eastern Mediterranean countries. Now we have quite good relations since December 24 when the Assad regime fell. Again, but this relationship was a volatile one. I mean, having said all this, the historical closeness, during the Assad regime from 63 to 24, which is a long one. I mean, this dictatorship lasted, the Ba'ath dictatorship lasted 62 years. And during that period, only the 98 to 2011 period was quite good. But then when it turned sour, again, our relations went down the drain, and we had difficulties, back to the old difficult days. Iran and Russia were in the picture, so that's another complication which I'll touch upon. The diplomatic level goes up and down, again, in this relationship. The Syrian previous regime supported terrorism. PKK terrorists were there. Abdullah Öcalan resided in Damascus for many, many years. He ran his operations in Turkey from there, which led to the death of around 40,000 people along the years in Turkey. Now we've come to a critical point where they have disbanded, given up their weapons, and now we are going through a very important process in Turkey in that sense to overcome this PKK activity. But the interesting thing is, last week they declared that they are withdrawing from Turkey, and what they call the media defense area. in their terminology, that means northern Iraq and Syria. So they are withdrawing into these countries. So maybe one might say that the issue is not, it's not ended, it's metastasized. So Hamas is there, ISIS is there, Syria is, I mean, when it comes to terrorism, everyone is there. Again, different regional approaches. They had irredentist policies, and in Hatay, this area here, they claim that this belongs to Syria, so it was always a big issue between the two countries. And perhaps it will be in the future, but that's a difficult one. Turkey, along the years, conducted operations because the yellow area you see on the map, that is controlled by the Kurds, the YPG, and they are very close to the PKK. So we conducted operations to push them back from our borders and balance the situation. So you see the dates of those operations there. Now, Israel-Syria relations, it's security-based. I mean, it's not up to me to talk too much about this because it's two different countries, but just to say a few words how it's seen from Turkey or from where I come from. It's security-based. Usually, conflict is part of the story. The Golan Heights is part of the relationship, the white area. Water is important, Lake Kinneret, historic rivalry, terrorism, Lebanon, the Palestinian cause, Druze. The Druze are the key words in this context. Of course, now it's a different ballgame, and with the new government in Syria, it's not like the Assad times, and the new government are open to talk, so we understand that behind the scenes there are some talks going on. And the new thing is that because the new regime in Syria is Sunni Muslim, they are both Israel and the new Syrian regime are against the Iranian influence. This is a new element since December. So let me zoom out a bit and talk about the wider region. Iran, Russia, US, and Arab countries are the main actors here. How are we time-wise? Okay. Now, of course, Iran is Iran in Syria and Lebanon. We can't analyze this situation without talking about them. They organize Shia forces, they finance terrorism, and they have proxies across the Middle East. There is historic rivalry with Turkey, Israel, and others, and also the Arabs, so it's not welcome. Lebanon, they are quite active. Yemen, the Palestinian cause, the more extreme armed elements they support in many ways. But with Assad gone, I would say Iran has lost influence in Syria. And of course, the Iranians are a sophisticated country, and they produce a lot of academic papers. They are well-educated, nice people. But the regime is a bit different, and my personal view is that they deserve better. So I hope we'll see what happens. Nuclear non-proliferation, of course, is an important matter when it comes to Iran. And both Turkey, as I said, and Israel have a common denominator here, as does the world and the whole region, that this doesn't go forward. And this is a joint interest. So I would like to emphasize that again. A few words about Russia and US, because they are both active in Syria. Russia supported Assad. They gave air support, which prolonged his reign. But now Syria last week or 2 weeks ago Shara visited Moscow, as you see in the picture, met Putin, and he said that he will respect the agreements that Russia had. So that means that they could hang on to their bases, which is in a way a renewal of the relationship with this different regime, which is a new element. Of course, Russia is a bit distracted with the attack in Ukraine, so that influences their presence and their approach in Syria. But it's also fair to say that Russia lost influence in Syria and it supports Iran generally. The United States, now of course President Trump's new Middle East strategy, potentially reshaping the geopolitical dynamics, is the new element here. We'll see how that is shaping up. But I think it's a bit premature to say that peace has arrived in the Middle East, and it would be a bit early to say that. I wish that was right, but if you know the region, you would have a big question mark about that. Now, the US lifted most sanctions on Syria, accepted Shara as the new leader. You know, there was a bounty on his head, so that was an important change for US-Syrian relations. The United States is actively supporting the Kurds in the yellow corner I just showed on the map. The YPG trains and supports them. Tolerates maybe the Russian presence. I'm sure the US isn't happy that they're there in the bases, but it's the US has a military presence there, so I suppose both sides tolerate each other to a certain extent. The US supports Israel and Turkey and manages Turkey's unease with the Kurds in Syria. And what they will do about reconstruction is yet to be seen. Now, Saudi Arabia is an important actor. They support al-Shara and the new regime. This is important because they are the leading Sunni state in the region, and they are both Arab. So they increase their influence in Syria. What role they will play in reconstruction and how much they will also encourage the other Arab countries is yet to be seen. But I guess they are well placed to do that. And how relations with Israel will develop in that front is also to be seen yet. Egypt and the Gulf states are also influential actors there. Well, the road ahead. Internal challenges, maybe we should look at regional challenges and what to expect. A few words. Maybe this might also open the discussion for the Q&A session. Well, the fundamental, there's been a fundamental change in Syria. We have to recognize that. And what I mean by that is the dictatorship since '63 to 2024 has gone. Now the Sunnis are in power, and the Sunnis are, as we saw on the ethnic map, 70%. So what does this mean? This means that democracy can function for them. They don't have to oppress the people. One man, one vote will automatically deliver what they want. So they will support, I suppose, a democratic transition in the country. This will be a new order. So if things go as expected, if they manage to align the internal forces, they might establish, they might start going down the democratic path, which in my view is a good thing in the Middle East, and we should support that. So the Sunnis are more confident in that respect. Of course, it's a big headache and a big patchwork. There are the Kurds, the Alawites, the Druze, there's ISIS, although they are in prison camps, but they are still there. On the other hand, the new Syrian regime has a weak army. It's not a regular army per se, so they have a difficulty in overcoming any internal challenges. They have to do it peacefully. They attempted a constitution. First, as you see in that picture on the top right-hand corner, they signed an agreement with the Kurdish side, but then they came up with a constitutional draft, and it was exactly opposite to what they signed. So that shows how difficult the way ahead will be for them. You see the regular forces of the YPG here. So this is quite a well-organized force there. We would tend to name them as closely affiliated PKK terrorists, but it looks like it's a bit beyond that. So this is a picture from the troubles in the lower, the southwestern corner with the Druze, and that led to internal conflict, and I think 1,000 people perished there. This is a grim picture from the troubles on the coast, from Latakia, and this is where the Alawite minority, which is 13%, those are the sect of former Assad. So that ran into troubles, and it's so it left a bitter taste on all. It's become a bit difficult. Of course, the country is ruined, as we all know, and of course the new regime have extremist roots. I mean, to give you a concrete example, this is Shadi Al-Waisi, the Minister of Justice. I think they changed him recently, but this is the same person a few years ago over an execution of 2 ladies. So that's a grim picture, I know, but it gives you an idea of what kind of new leaders are in office. So how this will shape up the new government, will it go down the path of democracy? Will it be able to overcome the sectarian differences? There are very big challenges there. These are 2 maps from the latest situation, and that was how the Assad regime fell. So you can find many of these if you are interested, of course, on the internet. The regional challenges, external forces are important, but they pull in different directions. So internally they are divided, and externally, external actors are influential, but they all have a different ball game. So it's a recipe for disaster, actually, if you know what I mean. And the US is there, Turkey is there, Israel is there, Iran is there, Russia is there, the Arab states are there, and they all have a different view of what should happen. So it's difficult. Generally speaking, the revisionist actors are quite active, and there are strong challenges to the international system as we know it, and that shows itself all across the globe, but also especially in this part of the world. Now, I would say the Sykes-Picot status quo, the borders which we see on the map, are challenged. Everyone has a different idea of what it should look like. There are state and non-state actors, revisionist actors. They're quite active also. Maybe new approaches are needed. Perhaps federal and confederal solutions for states might come to the forefront in the future, I would expect. Borders might change. My guess would be that if we get together 20, 30 years from now, we might be looking at a different map. But I wouldn't bet my money, and you will have to come back 20 years later if you want to have a bet on that. So, but my guess is that there are strong forces which want to change borders in the Middle East. I would say there's trouble ahead. I mean, as I said before, it's not a rosy picture, unfortunately. But it's important to coordinate between the actors, and there are new opportunities for dialogue and resolution, is my take on this. With good management, I think a lot can be done. Of course, technology affects also this region, AI, of course, social media, mobile phones, and connectivity. This is an ignorant part of the world. I mean, the man in the street is a bit ignorant, unfortunately, and this plays into everyday politics. But everyone has a cell phone, and this is changing like everywhere in the world. It is changing this part too. Like the Bedouin in the, I don't know, in the middle of the desert, he can now connect and see a different picture. And so this is egalitarian, something that didn't exist before for centuries. And I think it's also quite educative, which is a good thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's a very complicated picture, and my job is to even complicate more, perhaps as a historian. But I will say a few things and then I'll pose some questions.
Sure.
This week in Economist, there was an interesting piece. Have you seen, I don't know, about Syria and Turkey, and it says whether Syria is going to be the vassal state of Turkey. This is the title, it's the first sentence. It's very interesting. I mean, Turkish involvement of Syria and Erdogan's involvement in Syria. The Turkish export reached $2 billion just in 6 months. This is like tremendous. And 4 million Syrians in Turkey, they've established businesses, and some businesses now returning Syria, so there will be interesting relations between the Syrian, Turkish businessmen and women between these two countries, but also the regime in Syria. To what extent it's Al-Shara is a Turkish stooge or not? I mean, this was a kind of a discussion. Obviously, Israel is there, but what makes me like somewhat think about this, in Turkey, the enormous erosion of democratic system last 6-7 years since the referendum, and the regime in Turkey is not stable. There's a coalition. This coalition is somehow it's losing its popular support. They are attacking the oppositions. They jailed opposition leaders, as we know. There are massive demonstrations on the streets. Yet there's peace process with the Kurdish movement and mainly PKK. One reason of this negotiation is obviously internal politics. Dismember divide the opposition, if you like. But the other reason is obviously Syria. In Rojava, or the northern Syria, whether northern Syria would be under Turkish control or at least pacifized, Meanwhile, the coalition in Turkey, I mean, we heard different things. Some people, Erdogan, now he's a part of this Trump club. But when Erdogan was coming to DC and Devlet Bahçeli, his coalition partners said Turkey should establish a coalition with China and Russia against Israel and US. Same day. You can say that this is like a fantasy, this is internal politics, but I mean, the regime coalition actually said different things about the region. So I don't see a kind of stability there, despite that Turkish involvement in Syria is somehow, or helping to Syrian regime and everything. But there's so many unknowns, and the main unknown is, I suppose, in what's going on in Turkey.
Yes, we are living in interesting times indeed, and well, it's an open discussion for everyone to see. In Turkey, there's never a boring day, but of course, I'm not a politician myself. I'm an ex-diplomat, now partly academic, partly business. So I don't want to speculate on internal politics, but a lot of this is internal politics. I mean, posturing, saying let's go here, let's go there, and but at the end of the day, of course, what interests me more is the interests of the state, and where does Turkey's interests lie, which will, at the end, impose themselves and dictate where Turkey will be heading. I think it's very interesting that the Kurdish issue has come to where it has. I've worked on the file for many years. In the 90s, I was in that department. We weren't able to go to northern Iraq at the time. Then we did, and we put an end to the infighting between the KDP and the PKK. The PUK and the KDP, because the PKK was exploiting that internal fighting. So together with the US and the UK, we established something called the Peace Monitoring Force. From those days to today, it's gone a long way. And I served again in 2003 in the run-up to the war, and that was also another interesting time. And now our company has taken over a big project, which is a wastewater management. We are building a large facility there. So we visit now and again, so I can compare the three periods, which is central to the Kurdish issue. Erbil has it's become, compared to the 90s, it's like maybe a mini Dubai in that part of the world. Very stable, balanced, democratic, I would say, and making headway. Syria, of course, is a different ballgame. Then there are Kurds in Turkey, and as you say, we are going through an important process. Every week something new is happening. Like yesterday, I was watching before I came here. The discussion was that how should the newly established Peace Commission in Parliament interview Abdullah Öcalan? This was unthinkable, only a few months ago. And now the verdict is that they will go and visit him in prison, on the prison island he is, and see what he has to say, and then broadcast that to the MPs, and then we will go through a transition, and some changes will be made in the country. So Turkey itself is going through a very important phase, and I think this deserves support from everyone who would believe in democracy and the way forward, both for an important ally and also for the Kurds themselves. It's a democratic process, so I think that bodes well. A vassal state, Syria, I think that's exaggerated. I wouldn't agree with that analysis, but of course Turkey is going to be influential automatically because of the economic reasons. And another reason is, of course, the refugees, which spent a decade and a half in Turkey. Now, they've all learned Turkish, so the other day I was watching a YouTube video who was going around the streets and talking to people. They all come up to him as soon as he speaks Turkish. I was here and speaking in perfect Turkish, and I was doing this, I was doing that, what are you doing? So wherever he goes around town, at one point the police comes up to him saying you can't film in the middle of town like this. Then he starts talking Turkish and says, okay, do what you want. And, so the affinity and the relationship is there, it's automatic. We're talking about big numbers. And of course, some of them are quite successful and they will remain in Turkey. They are doing businesses. So I think that bodes well for the relationship. Now, I didn't see the Economist one, but I saw a piece on in the Financial Times, and they were referring to a whole page article, and they were referring to a German businessman who went to Damascus, and he was expecting that they would ask for earth moving, rubble moving equipment, but what he came across was actually a blueprint for the Damascus metro, and also a 20-year housing plan. So, and he was quite surprised. He says he was reluctant to invest at this point, but if things change, he could go. So This is a snapshot, a small snapshot of how the country is changing, and I think it's a fair one. And Turkey, of course, will assist in all this, and everything has to be rebuilt. I think the Arab countries, the Gulf countries, will be forthcoming in supporting, funding the reconstruction of the country, which, if that angle is taken care of, the Turks are great builders, and my company also. I mean, we build all across the world, and Turkish contractors are number 2 after the Chinese in the world. So with them at the doorstep, it's only natural that you'll drive your truck across and start building the towns very fast if it's funded. So there needs to be a master plan. I'm sure people are working on this, and this is going to change the country very fast, would be my guess.
Okay, I know I have a ton of questions, but I'm restraining myself, and I'm going to open this up. We have about 25 minutes. Maybe we can go 5 minutes beyond time if we have a lot of interest. So please just briefly introduce yourself and pose a question. Yes, sir, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Master. My name is Hamza. I'm one of the graduate students with the Masters in International Policy program. Question is, it seems like Turkey has benefited greatly and played great cards from both American retrenchment in supporting forces in Syria that aren't the Kurds, and also from Iranian retrenchment in getting rid of Assad. The question is, how do Turkish interests then conflict with other regional actors, specifically Israeli ones? Because it seems like the Israeli interest is for destabilization and chaos in Syria, and the Turkish interest is a state that's functioning and allows for returns on all the investment Turkey has put in. And so how do you see these playing out? What kind of resolution would Syria look like where the Israelis might be dissuaded from instilling chaos and Turkey is able to have a system where its interests are formalized in various ways?
Yeah, let me just throw in that I reject the premise that Israel's strategic interest is in instability and chaos in Syria. But maybe I can follow up on that. But I think we should put that as an open question. I actually think that there's broad room for convergence in Turkish and Israeli interests in a Syria that's united, stable, but that respects its minorities. I think that's the key. And for the Israelis, that's especially important with regards to the Druze. But an important question. Sorry, Ambassador, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. You took the words from my mouth. I was going to say the same thing. Actually, our interests, Israeli and Turkish interests, would converge in having a peaceful and stable Syria. Creating chaos is, I wouldn't say, in anyone's benefit. But what Israel, I think, would want, and I can't speak for them, but I could only guess, would be a system which doesn't threaten the country, in this case Israel. So if it's a stable country, all the better. It will have a reason not to be aggressive, and would be a regional stabilizer. So actually, I think there is a common denominator there, and I think the Israelis are smart enough to see this. Perhaps Turks will be the builders. We will automatically be there because we're right at the doorstep, and we've been working together, as I said, through the refugees for a long time. Of course, now the picture isn't very positive. I mean, there's no electricity, no banking system, no running water, no legal framework, no proper legal framework. Everything has to be redone, and it's not easy. But I think we will get there, and my guess is that it's not easy to overcome the sectarian divides, but a balance will be found one way or another. I want to touch upon the new leadership here. This new Syrian leadership is actually quite sophisticated. I mean, they have, yes, violent roots. They have their roots in ISIS, al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, all these, and they were branded as terrorists, they were dressed like terrorists, and now they put on a tie. So there is a transition there. definitely, that's a fact. But if you look at like al-Shara, for example, when he went, they took over Damascus, he went back to his parents' houses in Meze, which is close to the presidential palace, and knocked on the door and asked the tenants to leave. He could have gone on with his bodyguards and just thrown them out. I mean, and in a civilized manner, he went alone. And I understand that they offered tea, but it was an Alawite tenants given this property. So he did the civilized thing and said, "Look, I give you a month to pack up and go," and they did. So it's their own house. So he took it over. His wife, the first lady, is an unknown. Her name is Latife Adrubi. She is a master of Arabic. She has a master's in Arabic and comes from a prominent family. The grandfather, Alaaddin Adrubi, was a prime minister of Syria in the 20s. Unfortunately, only for 1 month because he was killed. But still, it gives you an idea. Under the Ottoman rule, he was a governor in, I think, Yemen, and also in another part in Iraq someplace. So it's a prominent family, the Al-Drubi family. So as the first lady, she is also a strong support to the husband. And they are all educated people. I mean, if they can shed their extreme religious roots, I think, and go for democracy, do that leap of faith, I think it will serve Syria very well, and also the region itself. Thank you.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
then Ali,
Thank you, Ambassador Uras. This is a really interesting talk. I had a question about just Israel-Turkey relations. You mentioned that things are at a bit of a low and that there is potential for further conflict between Israel and Turkey on Syria, but I just want to hear a little bit about what do you think are specifically going to be the flashpoints or potential pathways for conflict that we should be looking out for. Do you think that Syria is going to be the next biggest hurdle in Israel-Turkey relations going forward?
Well, thank you. That's anyone's guess. The potential is definitely there for friction, because in a sense now Turkey and Israel have become neighbors in Syria, so we are closer physically than before. But I hope that won't lead to friction or anything which we wouldn't want to see. And I think both sides are fully aware of that. So I think diplomacy will play its role. I guess not that I'm privy to any confidential information, but my guess would be that they're working behind the scenes to stabilize things. And it has been done in the past. I'm sure it will be done again. Yeah. What makes me more confident is that despite everything that was going on and all the troubles, the economy continued until just very, very recently. So now I think things will pick up again very, very rapidly.
Let me just say, I think one of the key themes that the ambassador spoke about is this history of, let's say, bounded movement in the relationship, because both Turkey and Israel are sort of firmly anchored in Western structures. Things historically, even at times of tensions, don't go completely off the rails, and often you have a very, let's say, toxic media environment and very poisonous rhetoric, and yet economic ties continue and even blossom. Okay, what I think has made Israelis very, very nervous recently is the question of whether those guardrails are actually failing. Okay, and at the time when Turkey is resurgent in the region, Turkey has a military base in Somalia, a naval base in Djibouti, a military base in Libya. and now the Syrian involvement, and the big question is about Gaza and whether Turkey will be involved, and with Turkish reconstruction capabilities and the close relationship between Erdogan and Trump, whether Turkey is going to be given a foothold in Gaza. It all begins to look to Israelis like a restoration of the Ottoman Empire. Okay,
Good or bad?
huh? Great for you.
Not for
We
me.
love you as neighbors, but
Not for
you
me.
know. So that's really sort of the space, and we're very conscious that as things get economically bad in Turkey, high inflation, high interest rates, etc., lashing out against Israel, and in some respects lashing out against the Jews, plays a very kind of important kind of rhetoric. So Israelis are getting nervous about that. The other really important piece of this is the relationship between Qatar and Turkey. This is the big elephant in the room, because from an Israeli point of view, the nightmare scenario is this kind of resurgent Muslim Brotherhood ideology-led alliance between Qatar, boundless money, and Turkey, the second largest military in NATO, very powerful military-industrial base, and with this growing neo-Ottoman ambitions in the Eastern Mediterranean. And that combination is making Israeli strategic planners very, very nervous. I say all of that because I want to ask you a question. If you're advising a future Israeli prime minister, I'm not going to say if you're advising Bibi, but if you're advising, we're going to go to elections this year, and let's imagine, you know, we have a different, whoever is going to be prime minister, and you're advising the Israeli prime minister, particularly on Syria. What would you advise an Israeli prime minister to do? What are the signals that Israel can send to Turkey that say, we want a functional, stable Syria? We have that in common. We love to have you, Turkey, as a neighbor bounded within your borders, but we're going to be very nervous about Turkish intelligence presence right on our border. So maybe you can sort of stay north of Homs or Hama or something along those lines. And frankly, we're not very comfortable with you and the Qataris playing a role in Gaza reconstruction, right? Until the relationship improves. What would you say to, you know, the Israeli leadership? How to approach this issue?
Yeah, that's an interesting question and not easy to answer. But my basic advice, I suppose, would be to coordinate and get on well with Turkey. And the more coordination, I suppose, opens the doors to solving any problem. Of course, another elephant in the room would be the Gaza issue and the Palestinian issue. So now I hope that's sorting itself out, and with that out of the way, that would remove a large obstacle, because not only in Turkey, but all across the globe, the public opinions are a bit agitated.
But forgive me, it's not out of the way. And the real elephant in the room in Gaza is that Israel wants Hamas gone, and Qatar and Turkey are interested in the survival of Hamas. I think Turkey would be very comfortable in a technocratic Palestinian government that is really led by Hamas behind the scenes. And I think that there's a deep vested interest on the part of Erdogan to make sure that Hamas continues to play a role in Palestinian politics. Do you agree with that? I mean, that's certainly a Qatari role, but I would also make the argument that it's a Turkish role. And that is fundamentally at odds with Israel's, not only Israel's strategic interest, but with the Trump plan that essentially says Hamas needs to be disarmed, Gaza needs to be de-radicalized, and we need to have a sort of post-Hamas political reality in Gaza. Is that in line with Turkish interests?
I think so, but maybe we should differentiate between the political wing and the armed wing of Hamas. And I understand that the military wing of Hamas, which especially led to the 7th of October, was strongly supported by Iran. maybe even fund it, they say. And Turkey and Qatar, if they have any influence, that's over the political wing. So I don't. There is a discrepancy there. We see this also a similar situation with the Kurdish issue. I don't want to go into too much detail and bore you, but like in the political field, the PKK in the mountains, the military wing, was acting totally against the MPs, the Kurdish MPs in Ankara. So this can happen. I mean, a military wing and a political wing can act dysfunctionally. I mean, I'm not in any way advocating Hamas or saying that they should be around. What they did was terrible, and the military wing should pay a price for it. But you can't, in Gaza at least, eradicate a political movement. You can't deal with an idea. That will survive one way or another externally, probably. So that's a difficulty. It's a difficulty for everyone. And I would agree that Hamas's military wing has, they have no place in that context. And maybe you're right, there is some way to go there. We're not there yet. But eventually, I think there is a drive towards trying to pick up the pieces. Like this morning, I was listening to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Ankara, in Istanbul, and they got together and trying to organize a stabilization force. Of course, I think this is a difficult issue and a far cry. I don't think it will succeed very much, but still, at least it shows that they are trying to do something. So, is it easy? No, it's not. But should it be done? What I'm saying is coordination and cooperation and patching up the situation. Yes, it should. And I suspect it will be done, because our common denominators are much larger than what draws us apart.
Sorry, can I just intervene? You said it will be done. What is the it?
The it is ending terrorism in Gaza and wherever they are in the Middle East.
And what about
Gaza especially?
What about the stabilization force in Gaza? Because how could that possibly be ended, and how could Gaza possibly be reconstructed without an international stabilization force?
Maybe it has a role to play, but what would be the mix? Who would be there is another issue. Definitely Israel, because of its controlling force there, would have to agree. Without Israeli agreement, it wouldn't happen. My personal view, and I'll say this totally personally, is that I wouldn't want to see Turkish forces there. Because for many reasons. It could lead to friction, it could lead to collateral damage, it could blow out of proportion. We are too much involved in the region, too close to the region, and I don't think it's a very good idea. Maybe it's better to form a force from more remote players. But I would agree with what you said. We would need a stabilization force at one point, probably.
Can I ask a
Please.
totally different question?
Is it okay if we go 2 or 3 minutes after
No, not at all.
1:15? Great.
I've
And
come
then-
a long way, and
yeah,
I'm totally.
Larry, please go.
So some people, we have dreamers in the United States. So some people are dreaming. Maybe Turkey, Syria could actually evolve into a democracy. We know some of the democratic resistance to Assad that's actually gone back to the country and is somewhat optimistic about this transitional government. But on the other hand, you could argue there's actually no neighbor in the region that would really view the democratization of Syria as a very enticing scenario. So I'm very glad that you began to speak about al-Shara and the new leadership and so on. I mean, how could you imagine? Syria is in some kind of political transition. How could you imagine this evolving into a kind of settled political system?
Well, it's not easy, of course. They might feel more relaxed because one man, one vote will definitely, with 70% Sunni, probably they would feel confident that the outcome would be something they could live with. But if it's worked, the system is, reflects the new reality of Syria, which looks like a bit of a patchwork, and that is reflected into the new constitution and the new political system. Then it might work, and there might be a degree of decentralization. That might be a positive influence. It's working in Iraq so far. The Kurds are quite autonomous, and they make their own decisions.
And I think it's clear that al-Shara's primary goal is to consolidate domestic power and achieve legitimacy for his regime. And this would be a very powerful legitimation mechanism and a signal to international investors and etc. That will be important for Syria. Halil, then I have a Zoom question, and then we'll see how we do time-wise. Yeah, Halil, please go ahead. And we'll end with Roberto.
Yeah, thanks so much for accepting our invitation to come here. So initially we thought that like the title would be like Turkey and Israel in Syria, and that would be like a more literal description of the situation, because actually Turkey and Israel are like one common denominator. They are both in Syria militarily, and they occupy certain parts of Syria. One thing that comes to my mind, like we never talk about future Turkish withdrawal from northern Syria, where it occupies Afrin, Kurdish, once Kurdish majority, now Arab majority, due to displacements. And there's an IDP question there, as you know, because most of the Kurds there, they were displaced to another Kurdish parts of Syria. Like, do you think, in the near future, Turkey has any intention to withdraw from the Kurdish majority parts of Syria? That is one question. And second, connected to that, so, like, we know Al-Qaeda killed so many people, both in Syria and also in the US after 9/11 and other parts of the world. And the US eventually accepted an Al-Qaeda leader who fought against the US as a legitimate partner, and even removed sanctions and like designated terrorist designation. So like for Turkey, Turkey makes a loose connection with YPG and then terrorist organization. Like wouldn't it be much easier to remove, as we are in the peace process now, wouldn't it be much easier just to accept them as they are and not to see them as terrorists and deal with them as part of the larger peace process? It would have been a much more stabilizing move as opposed to what Turkey is doing now.
I think
if the US did that, why Turkey cannot do that?
Yes, it's going through a transition now, and I think Turkey is changing its policy. Like, you cannot, I think, decouple what's happening in Syria from what's happening in Turkey at the moment regarding the Kurds. If we are talking about the Turkish parliament sending a delegation to interview Abdullah Öcalan, this is definitely going to have an influence in Syria, in the Kurdish areas. Don't forget that Mazlum Abdi, they call him so-called General Mazlum Abdi, who is calling the shots in the YPG-controlled areas today, was the bodyguard of Abdullah Öcalan. His name is Shahin or something. It's a nom de guerre. If you look at any demonstration, you'll see Abdullah Öcalan posters everywhere. You'll see PKK flags everywhere. It's salad of acronyms, letter salad today, YPG, SPD, SPG, but it all boils down to Abdullah Öcalan's influence in that region. So if we manage to make headway, which we are doing in Turkey regarding the Kurdish issue, I think this is definitely going to have a positive bearing on what's happening in Syria. So perhaps just as you described it. So I think this is a high probability, and I hope so. And if we manage to get these pieces right, it will bode very good for the whole region, not only for Turkey or Syria, or further afield Israel and other neighbors, but also for countries with Kurdish populations. It will be a democratic way out, and I'm all for it. I mean, I hope this will happen. You know, under the Ba'ath dictatorship, the Kurds didn't even get ID papers. They were like living on that land, but they were not citizens. They were not even recognized. So I mean, this has to change. I mean, it cannot continue in the future, and I hope they will be brought into the system, and it can be done. So. In that context, of course, withdrawal will also settle itself out. It's a matter of this transition.
Okay, the question we had on Zoom has to do with the prospects of Syria succeeding to hold together, and do its neighbors want it to succeed as a democracy? I think you've addressed this theme. I don't know if you want to add one more, and then we'll end with Alberto.
I think, yes, I would like to add that I think all neighbors and everyone in their right mind should advocate a democratic Syria, and democracy and
it would be the most remarkable transformation of a political leader probably in human history. From
Exactly.
Al-Qaeda operative to
Yes.
free and fair elections is quite a journey.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
So inshallah, we'll say to that for sure.
with good advisors, good coaching, maybe they can do that.
Yeah. Alberto.
My question is exactly on this. So I'm not at all, I do not know about this area of the world, but the one instance we have of historical precedent, I would say, of something not as much, but it is the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua that did lead into a democracy for a while. Then it turned very ugly, and it's one of the worst dictatorships in Latin America today. But Ortega did become a Democrat for 50 years. So one possibility of Syria, I'm just wanting to ask again Larry's question, and also I guess the internet question in a different way. Would it be enough just with a Syrian semi-democracy? And I would go even further, if Turkey keeps on going down in some path and Israel keeps on going in some path, would there be like a good enough sort of semi-democracy for the region in Syria, rather than this, great polyarchy expectations?
Quoting Churchill, of course, you know that democracy is not the ideal, but except for the rest. So
The worst form of government, except for all the others.
all the others, yeah. Thank you. And it has its own difficulties. This transition is going to be painful. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's in everyone's interest. So we will do our best to help out. They have, maybe double, triple trouble. I mean, it's not just writing a constitution and putting it on the table. They have to balance out the sectarian difficulties, prevent that from spilling into internal strife, war. They have to balance their own, the internal, government circles. There are the more extreme wings who aren't happy, like they are talking about abolishing, is it Syrian Arab Republic, getting rid of the Arab there, would be a way forward for the Kurds and others. They are discussing this, but the more extreme elements are not happy with this. Is it going to be Sharia law? Is it going to be civil law? There are strong forces which advocate a religious form of government, Sharia, So how are you going to satisfy these people, and how are you going to contain them? Turkey, I think, has a role to play here, because our democratic process has been going on for 2 centuries, and we know how difficult it is. We know how difficult it is to develop the country. That's the second set of troubles. Reconstruct the country, develop the economy, educate the people, balance the books, start exporting, start tourism, doing this, and at the same time keeping all these moving parts together. It's not easy. So everyone has to chip in and play their own positive part and coordinate between ourselves. I think it can be done, really. I am hopeful. I want to be hopeful.
Well, on that hopeful note, please join me in thanking the ambassador. Thank you so much.